Hello, friends. So, Bible study, the NIV Acts, chapter 22. We are starting at verse 17, and then we are going to go into 23:10. Okay. So, Paul is testifying. There's like this uproar. The Romans removed him to the barracks. They let him come back out to speak again. They're not sure this is a good idea, but okay. When I returned to Jerusalem and was praying at the temple, I fell into a trance and saw the Lord speaking. "Quick," he said to me, "leave Jerusalem immediately, because they will not accept your testimony about me." "Lord," I replied, "these men know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believed in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him." Then the Lord said to me, "Go. I will send you far away to the Gentiles." Now, this part of the parable starts at verse 22. This is Paul, the Roman citizen, because that other one was Paul speaks to the crowd. And this does have one more parable in it. "The crowd listened to Paul until he said this. Then they raised their voices and shouted, 'Rid the earth of him! He is not fit to live!' As they were shouting." All right, so verse 23. As they were shouting and throwing dust, throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, their outer cloaks, so they could go stone them and not ruin their nice clothes. The commander ordered Paul to be taken into the barracks. So God is having the Romans protect Paul from the Jews. You need to, okay? He directed that he be flogged and questioned in order to find out why people were shouting at him like this. Like, what the hell is this? As they stretched him out to flog him, Paul said to the centurion standing there, "Is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty?" Because remember who Paul is, okay? The Sanhedrin is made up of Pharisees and Sadducees. These are very learned people. They know the law. Okay? These are not just backwoods preachers. These are senators. Okay? That's who they are. So he knows what he's doing. Is this even legal? Right? When the centurion heard this, he went to the commander and reported it. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "This man is a Roman citizen." When the commander went to Paul and asked, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" "Yes, I am," he answered. The commander said, "I had to pay a big price for my citizenship." But I was born a citizen," Paul replied, because Judea was under Roman rule at the time of his birth. Tarsus, which is where he's from, but it's not where he grew up. But Tarsus was under Roman rule during the time, so it doesn't matter. Tarsus actually changes what country it belongs to quite a bit in the Old Testament, so it's not a surprise. So the answer there is no. They are not allowed to do that. So they had to stop. Those who were about to question him withdrew immediately. The commander himself was alarmed when he realized he had put Paul, a Roman citizen, in chains. Because again, that's not legal either. The next parable is called "Before the Sanhedrin." It's verse 30. The next day, since the commander wanted to find out exactly why Paul was being accused by the Jews, he released him and ordered the chief priests and all the Sanhedrins to assemble. Then he brought Paul and had him stand before them. So he's getting the two groups together to find out what this is, because he's like, I don't want this uproar in my city, so we are going to settle this. I can't just beat him. He's a Roman citizen. So we got to figure out what this is. So now we're in chapter 23. Paul looked straight at the Sanhedrin and said, My brothers, I have fulfilled my duty to God in all good conscience till this day. At this, the high priest Ananias, who's related to Caiaphas, he's like his father-in-law or something like that, ordered those standing near Paul to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, God will strike you, you whitewashed wall. You sit there to judge me according to the law, yet you yourself violate the law by commanding that I be struck. Like giant hypocrisy going on right there. And good for Paul. All right? Those who were standing near Paul said, You dare insult God's high priest? Paul replied, Brothers, I did not realize that he was the high priest, for it is written, Do not speak evil about the ruler of your people. So he's claiming like, hey, look, I've been overseas. I didn't know he'd become the high priest. I thought he was just another one like me. Right? So what Paul's doing here is he's recognizing the room he's in, and that it's very important as we go through life. I cannot tell you how many times I have been frustrated, and I've had to counsel my friends because they're frustrated, because they're in a room that they've been in for a while, and they're no longer in vibration with it, because they're seeing, just like I had to see, what parts of myself needed to be worked on and healed, so I could go work on them and heal them. And that's, really what I've been spending my time doing, which is what leads me to, doing Bible study with all of you, because this is part of how I worked on me to heal me, was looking for answers that I need within here. And I have been, I've been very dedicated in my Bible study, and I have found them. I find things within these words that are relevant to my day that I don't even know are going to be relevant to my day until as my day unfolds, because I do this at the beginning of my day to help set me, which is why I share it with all of you. Hopefully it sets you as well. That's for you to decide. I don't concern myself with it, because anyone who is supposed to find it, Creator will send. And He'll send it when they need it. And whenever that is the right time by me. He's in control of every moment of every minute of my day, like every single second, microsecond, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. So I don't really concern myself too much with everything else. That's part of how I keep the stressors at bay. I had a lot more stressors once. I was in the wrong room. had been working on myself and becoming a better person, and I was now surrounded with people who I used to be in alignment with, where their actions were just something I shrugged off, that I could no longer shrug off. And trying to talk with them in order for us to have some kind of common understanding about like how I'm not to be treated, or please don't, say these kinds of things, or I don't want to engage. I don't want to watch that thing anymore. I don't want to listen to this. I'm not in that space. I don't want to go out drinking, or, whatever it might be, depending on the friend. I'm not in alignment with them anymore. But they didn't want to be healing anymore. They haven't gotten to there. Hopefully one day, they will. Some of them I've seen come into healing spaces, since then. So, that's a beautiful thing whenever and wherever it can happen. And it's always my deepest desire that that's what anything that I might say to somebody does. But it's not really me, right? I'm just a channel for the Holy Spirit. Anybody who's doing God's work, it's God's work. We can only do what we're empowered to do. So I just do the best I can and try to leave the world a better place than I found it. That's the goal for every day. That's really the only goal for every day. And I'm blessed to get the opportunity to assist people as I go through my life and I go through my journey. And it's such a blessing that I hope other people get the chance to. So Paul is realizing the room that he's in is full of egos. He's not in a room full of his fellow disciples where he's going to be able to do this. This is not the time for him to testify about the joy of Jesus. This is the time for him to read the room and get to the place where he's using the Holy Spirit and using the truth, just the truth, to show them who they are. And to show this Roman who they are. Because the Roman wants to know why don't they like you. And he's going to show them why. And they're not going to be coming to it afterwards. They're going to watch it unfold. Then Paul, knowing that some of them were Sadducees and others were Pharisees, called out in the Sanhedrin. Okay, so he's calling out to his people. These are his people that he came from. My brothers, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee, so legacy. I stand on trial because of my hope in the resurrection of the dead. When he said this, dispute broke out between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. That's the difference between the two. The Sadducees and the Pharisees have a fundamental belief difference, just sort of like the Sunni and the Shiite Muslims. There's a fundamental belief difference, both like the Catholics and the Protestants. Fundamental belief difference. Or, if you will, different political parties. The Sadducees say there is no resurrection, and there are neither angels nor spirits. But the Pharisees acknowledge them all. So to the Sadducees, there's no heaven. There's no heaven. You don't have a soul. You're just a body. And when you die, that's it. There's nothing. And that is a belief system that certain people today still indeed have. It is something that has managed to stick around. If you're watching this, that sounds crazy to you. Right? And to me, it sounds very much so, because the soul is electricity. That's what it is. It's an energy. And energy, according to science, can neither be created nor destroyed. It simply changes shape. Spirits are energy. We can measure them on different, with different electrical currents. There's electrical currents moving all around us, so we don't have the technology to measure. Like, we can't really measure, there's mathematical ways of measuring gravity, but it's not like we scoop up gravity in a machine and it spits out a number at us. We can't do that. It's a force. We're not really aware of it, but we know it's there. Energy is like that all around us. Gravity is just an example. Anyone who starts getting into the quantum physics and astro, they will, in science, hard sciences, they will come through and they will also tell you, yeah, there's all kinds of things around us we can't see. We don't have the perception for it. So that's the fundamental difference. Some people believe in an afterlife, and other people don't. And it's always been there. Verse 9. There was a great uproar. And that's what Paul wanted to show them, the Romans. And some of the teachers of the law who were Pharisees, which is what Ananias is supposed to be, stood up and argued vigorously. We find nothing wrong with this man. They said, what if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him? The dispute became so violent that the commander was afraid Paul would be torn to pieces by them. He ordered the troops to go down and take him away by force and bring him to the barracks. So once again, Jesus and Elohim have Paul speaking the Holy Spirit truth real hard to people in positions of power. And he has them cleverly getting out of the way of being killed. Because they want him killed. But they can't have him killed. And God's got another purpose for him. He's forcing the Romans to take Paul actually into safety because the Jews can't get him there. And he will proceed to write letters, which we will find in other books when we get there. You know, the Corinthians letters. Those are all written by Paul. As you can tell, Acts is going to be very much so primarily about Paul. There's a lot of books in the New Testament that are really about Paul. So, because he is the most remarkable turnaround. From a bloodthirsty, close-minded, judgmental murderer to the greatest, most devout servant that other people from his hometown could not see his redemption value. So, let's remember that the on high has a function and a purpose for everyone in existence, even if we don't understand it. People are messy. We are supposed to love them anyway. Our commandment from him was to love one another. That does not give us any exceptions. If somebody really irritates you, pray they get the healing that they need. You can throw a little sass in there. Jesus had sass in him. I like to go, please heal this person so they stop being so low energy vibration that they think coming at me is going to do anything. Because I'm not in a 3D position to help them, or I would. So let's remember to leave the world better as we found it. Happy 4th of July, my friends. Let freedom reign.